Welcome to the PMI of Understanding, a PMP tool for your PMP exam to help you better answer the questions. Jumping straight into how the tool works, we have an understanding of the product lifecycle that is generally accepted in hardware, software, and other places. It starts off with analysis of the product, design of the product, development of the product, testing of the product, and implementation of the product. Now, all of this happens in a wider expanse of project management. You need to understand what the project manager does as this product is being developed. There is integration, scope, scheduling going on. There is costing. There is quality. There is resource management, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. All of this is cocooned in a bigger bubble, which is the 5 process groups. And the 5 process groups are simply initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Now, on the exam, the questions will be, what should the project manager do next? Because of this, you need to approach the questions with a lens of analysis, a lens of problem solving, a lens where you break down the problem into smaller pieces to solve each question on the exam. And this is where we bring in the dig, sieve approach, which completes the eye of understanding. Every question that you get poses a problem, so you need to define the problem and identify the root cause. These are 2 very important steps. If you miss this, you could struggle with the entire exam. So you need to get good at defining the problem, identifying the root cause, generating alternatives in your head before you look at PMI's alternatives. Then choose the best alternative based on the ideas you have generated. This happens in a snap second, because when you see a question, you only have a minute, 15 seconds max. So in the blink of an eye, you should have processed all that information. And the only way you can get that quick is by practice. Practice makes perfect. So I want you to look for links below to my 200 question tests. I have 2, and you can go through these to get really good in your mental analysis. After you have chosen the best alternative, implement it mentally. Think about the implementation hypothetically and ask, does this really work? Would this really solve the problem in the real world? So finally, verify that your mind is in the right zone and choose the answer. This is how you need to approach the exam. There are 4 layers here. There's the product lifecycle layer, the knowledge area layer, the process group layer, and the problem solving layer. This problem solving layer is buried deep in the PMBOK guide. If you have not read the PMBOK guide 6th edition thoroughly, you will very likely miss this important step. But wait, there's more. There is one more very important aspect that you should not miss as you comb through the content. Sometimes to define the problem is a challenge. And when all is said and done, and you have done your first go round, breakdown, you very well may need to break down the problem into smaller pieces. And in order to finally identify the root cause, you may need to gather data. These are 2 auxiliary steps that I have added to make it clearer for you. In conclusion, let's examine a simple question. You are the project manager for a complex construction project with a tight schedule. An iteration plan has been developed and the first iteration is almost complete. but there is a problem with the minimum viable product being demonstrated to the VP of Engineering. What should the project manager do next? Should you conduct a sprint review in the following sprint to resolve the issues? Should you conduct a daily scrum to discuss the defect? Should you conduct a retrospective to regroup? Or should you resolve the problem using pair programming during product road mapping? To solve this problem, you need to know where you are. Do you know where you are in this question? You need to be able to convert what we looked at to the world of Agile as well. Right now, we are closer to the end of the sprint. We are almost done with the iteration or sprint. For that reason, there are a number of things that we can cancel. We already know from the question that this is a demo. So it wouldn't be A because the question reads, the product is being demonstrated. Because it's being demonstrated, we know it's not A that we need to do. We're already doing A, and saying in the following sprint is delaying solving the problem. B, conduct a daily scrum to discuss the defect. We do not discuss defects in a daily scrum. We could discuss it in a meeting outside the daily scrum. So we will cancel B. C, conduct a retrospective to regroup. That doesn't sound like a bad idea. Regrouping could mean decide how to solve this problem. But let's look at D. Resolve the problem using pair programming. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because it is a complex construction project. So pair programming is likely to not solve this problem. Moreover, it says during product road mapping. You wouldn't be doing pair programming in the middle of road mapping. So A, B, and D do not make enough sense. The most sensible, most logical, in line with what and how we do things in Agile is option C. So everything else is bogus or incorrect. Let's take one more question before we close for the day. The purpose of these questions is to understand how questions could be posed on your exam, the what should you do next factor. Here's another question. And the question reads, and you can see the question on the screen, doing a quick housekeeping chore here. You are the project manager for a complex construction project with a tight schedule. The project is running behind and you need to take actions to expedite it. What should be your next step to optimize the project schedule using crashing? Is it A, identify critical path activities, B, analyze resource availability, C, request additional funding, or D, implement tracking? So, going to our eye of understanding, I want to show you one important step. And to be perfectly honest, this step may help people who are junior to the world of scheduling or anything else. That's why it's like a catch-all to help your thinking in anything you do. You need to always ask, where am I in the grand scheme of things? Am I here in planning? Am I here in monitoring and controlling? It sounds like you're in monitoring and controlling, but that's not all. You also, upon discovering where you are in this maze, you need to ask yourself, which knowledge area is this? So you need to spin the knowledge area wheel of consciousness to align with monitoring and controlling. So we have the schedule aligned with monitoring and controlling. You're thinking schedule, but you're also thinking MonCon. In addition to this, you could also think about where you are in the product life cycle so that you have a complete alignment of thoughts. Where you are right now, as far as the engineering of it, it sounds like you are in the middle of development somehow. So there's an alignment of doing on the product life cycle, scheduling in the knowledge areas, and monitoring and controlling in the grand scheme of things. Now, we could go a step further, and that step is to understand what the problem is. So we define the problem. What is the problem? Let's go back to the problem. So as you can read, it says the project is running behind and you need to expedite it. So actually, when you look at this, we've defined a problem. We don't know why exactly that's happened, but we are forced into some alternatives here. And the alternative that we are being forced into is to crash. So now that you understand that you need to crash, the second problem is to delineate what is not needed for crashing or what is premature in the listing. So, A, identify critical path activities. That's not a bad thing to do if you're working on critical path tasks, because that's what crashing is. It needs to shorten the critical path to make a dent. Because if you're crashing other tasks that are not on the critical path, you may not make a dent. B, analyze resource availability. That could happen, but it shouldn't be what you do first. C, request additional funding. We hopefully would not have to do this. It would certainly not be the first step. The first step will be to understand the critical path and your resources. D is so far out that it doesn't make sense. So the best answer here, my friends, is identify those critical path activities. Let's talk about it a little bit more. Crashing involves reducing the project duration by adding more resources to critical path activities. The first step in crashing is to identify critical path activities, as these are the activities that, if shortened, will have the most significant impact on the project duration. Analyzing resource availability, option B, is crucial to determine if additional resources can be allocated to the critical path activities, but that would not be your first step. Requesting additional funding is not a typical step in crashing. That is not to say it could not be necessary on some projects, but it's not something we would do right off the bat. This focuses more on the resource allocation and not financial consideration. So implementing fast tracking is not the first step either. It is a separate technique outside of crashing. And therefore, my friends, the best thing that you would have done as a PM is A, identify those critical path activities, and then understand your resource capabilities before applying those specific resources to do overtime and what have you. I hope you found this to be helpful. If you want to study more with me, go on to tinyurl.com/elite PMP. You can find that course on Udemy, and it will help you in your PMP prep. Thank you for joining me. I wish you all the very best in all your studying and your endeavors. Bye for now.